Identify and book the world's best speakers for your next event. MENA Speakers is the leading speakers and MC bureau in the Middle East. We bring global talent to the region and have established the region as a key global hub for speakers. Inspire and motivate your audience. Find exactly what you are looking for by working closely with us to assist you in understanding the cost-benefit analysis tied to selecting a speaker for any event. Ensure that your audience is educated, engaged, and empowered. Connect with us for a quick response and tailored advice. Book your speakers now.
Do you have an all-star HR team? You may feel your team is already performing at a high level, but let's take a closer look. Would your company's top leaders and employees agree that your HR team are operating at a high level? Are team members able to influence top executives on difficult topics? Are team members' business and strategy focused on the challenges the organization is facing? Does the executive team trust your direct reports as advisors on human capital issues? If you can answer yes to these questions, you have built an outstanding team. If you feel there is room for improvement, Strategy Focused Group can create a custom development program to elevate the quality of your HR team. We use HCI certification programs as well as non-certified HRBP MBA Masterclass to give your team a laser focus on the business and strategy. Please email us at info@strategyfocusedgroup.com.
Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. Friday is the CEO series, where we bring together global leaders, innovators, and disruptors. Our guest today is Edward
Nwokedi.
Go ahead. Nwokedi.
There you go.
Okay, cool. Took me a while to get to that, folks. He is currently the founder and CEO of RedSwan commercial real estate ProTech platform and marketplace for digitized real estate-backed securities. He was the former executive director of capital markets for Cushman & Wakefield, leading RedSwan into a $2.2 billion marketplace of institutional properties. Serial entrepreneur. First venture was at the age of 23, for people that are still trying to get their careers in order. And it was the first of 7 consecutive automotive service centers in the San Francisco Bay Area that grew sales by 10 times before exiting and starting the next industry venture, carstation.com. So welcome, Edward. How are you, my man?
Hey, good morning. How are you, Ron?
Glad to have you here. I'm glad you made time. I know you're traveling, and you're in a hotel and you're trying to get everything squared away with the Wi-Fi situations, but you've had an amazing career. I read through your background and from going from corporate, rising in corporate to that level, of executive director, and then pulling out and say, you know what, I'm going to make a U-turn and go do something else. Walk us through the highlights of that.
Well, I've been in commercial real estate for 20 years now. And back then I was with Cushman & Wakefield, which is one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the world. And, I was a major leader there, a top producer, and really enjoyed that challenge. But after you get to the challenge and you realize that you're now only way you can go is downward in terms of your career, in terms of volume transactions, you have to start looking for ways to outbeat your competition. And I was searching very diligently trying to find the next new thing in commercial real estate. And one of my previous colleagues from that carstation.com site company that we built told me to go to a blockchain conference. And I said, blockchain, I have no time for that. I don't even know what it is, right? But he convinced me I should go because he said that this is going to be an experience I will never forget. And I decided to jump on the plane and go to a blockchain conference in Dallas. And it was there that I started to not really pay attention to the cryptocurrency side of blockchain, but actually the technology itself and how it works. And so I met all the exhibitors at the booth, and really learned that this is a technology that will be enhancement to the capital markets industry. And then I really, grappled with that for a while because I'm thinking, I got to make that work. How can you do this, right? And then the SEC, 2 months later, came out with an announcement that they're banning the ICOs because they were too risky, too many people are losing money, no transparency. But they were authorizing the use of security token offerings, STOs. And so that was the aha moment that said, okay, this is going to be real. The SEC has just now said this is going to be the way of the future for securities. Then I want to jump into that. And that's what made me really jump into tokenization for commercial real estate.
Wow. That's high level thinking because, you hear so much about metaverse, you hear about Web3 and all these blockchain and this goes crypto. We saw what happened to crypto. And it's hard for a lot of people to get their heads around that whole new concept of the new way of doing business. When you came up with that idea, was it a hard sell to get people to try and understand where this could be headed or what it meant for them from a revenue model?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it was a hard concept for people to understand why I'm leaving such a successful career to go start a business that they never heard of before with a use case they never heard of before. But yes, after I sat down with some of my best clients who actually were initial investors in our company, I was able to convince them what's coming down the pipeline and that they should be prepared for it. If not with not all of their properties, but at least allocate 10% of their property value towards this process so that they can have at least that much liquidity to try it out. And I think it was just a matter of believing in me because I've been a good advisor for a long time and they decided to listen to me, right? And so now they're happy. Now they see what's going on. Now the rest of the world is piling in on this. So I'm really grateful for those that listened to me early on in 2018.
Yeah. So that says a lot about being an entrepreneur. When people believe in you, even if they don't really understand the concept, they'll take a chance. Versus someone who was just pitching this whole concept and had no connection to any of these potential investors. But is that how you would advise the new level of entrepreneurs in this new space to relationship first or?
We'll definitely go with the relationships because people understand you, they trust you. I think trust is a big factor when you're trying to get somebody to do something for the first time. They have to really trust the source. But then you also have to make it relevant, right? You have to say, hey, this is solving a big problem for you. And I know about that problem and they know I know about the problem. So if you can bring a unique solution to a big problem, more than likely they're going to listen to you and hear you out.
And you said they were also initial investors. And so in other words, they put some money in the game, not only bought into it, but put some money in the game to bring this concept along.
That's correct. So I didn't go to all of my previous clients. I went to 3 of my better clients I've done a lot of transactions for. They both have, 2 of them happen to be Canadians and 1 happen to be here in US. But they believed in right away. They said, hey, let me break you off something here and see how that works, Ed. But you haven't failed me yet. Please don't make this the first one, right? And I take that very seriously. I really do.
So the initial capitalization was what, if you could share that?
About $600,000.
$600,000 that got it off the ground. So when you look at the business that you're in now, what is the total valuation of that whole market?
So we look at the U.S. market, the TAM, total accessible market for the U.S. is about just under $2 trillion. So it's massive. Globally, we're looking into the $25 trillion globally, but in the U.S. we're looking at our TAM of just under $2 trillion. Excuse me. And so we look at that as an opportunity to become a leader in that space. We are the leader right now, holding on and trying to grow in that space. And we think the most important thing is continue to get adoption to people to convert their assets from the analog version to a digital version so they can have the benefits of digital. And I think many people understand that because you look at all the digital technologies, whether it be cell phones or TVs or or anything that has gone from analog to digital. Digital has been much better, much faster, much cheaper, and so the same applies for securities and tradability of securities.
2 trillion, and eventually current future state is 25 trillion. That's huge.
Yeah, that's globally. The commercial real estate value globally is about $25 trillion. Residential is even higher than that. When you look at the residential marketplace, even larger than that. But real estate is our largest asset class in the world, right? So when you combine all the real estate pieces, you're looking just under $300 trillion. That's the largest asset class in the world, which is the reason why I'm going after that, because I feel that there's a lot of upside, right? And there's a lot of properties. So I can't be happy with just $10 billion of assets in the chain. I've got to be, at the $1 trillion level to feel like I've made a dent in my market.
Yeah, you otherwise you're leaving a lot on the table.
Too much on the table. Excellent, for sure.
You mentioned, because one of my questions was, we're thinking about large real estate, buildings and all these kinds of things. And one of my questions was centered around home buyers and people owning homes. Is there an angle in there for them? Capital is tied up, and maybe they, the only other option was to get a second mortgage or do whatever you got to do. Can you explain that, how it would work for a person that owned a home, or is there an angle connected to that?
Well, we don't do homes just because we're a commercial, but the technology could be applied to homes and all. But you got to realize that if you're trying to do it with a home and you want to involve like rents or dividends from the real estate from your home, then you have to come to us for security tokenization. If you're looking for just bringing equity, crowdfunding equity members into your home so that you can stay there, pay rent, and bring in other equity investors, then that can be done without a broker dealer. So you can basically fractionalize 49% of your house, which is the net equity after your mortgage. You can fractionalize it. People can pay you that 49%, and then that they now own, whether it be 1 or 100 people, now own a fractional share of the equity of your house. So as it goes up in value, they can sell out their equity for other people who might want to get into that actual position.
Okay. As you're talking through this and you're coming across as the expert, I'm wondering about that first blockchain conference that you sat in on, and you're listening to all of the speakers and you're figuring out an angle. Was the learning curve steep? Because I had
a little help, Ron. But one thing I failed to mention is that I went to this conference and I met 2 guys who were already in technology and had an interest in real estate. And I was talking to somebody who was using blockchain for what you call, fractional ownership for the vacation rentals, the timeshares. They were using blockchain in that regard. And as I was talking to them, these 2 guys walked up and they said, "Are you in real estate?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm with Cushman & Wakefield." And they were so enamored that I was working in real estate that they wanted to partner with me. They forced me to have a dinner. We had a dinner, and then we decided we will partner, right? So that was my initial entry point with these other 2 gentlemen who were co-founders of the company.
Okay. Relationships.
The relationship. They had the technical background, so I can see what I wanted. I didn't know how to make it happen. I didn't know how to actually tokenize, but I saw the benefit. Well, they threw me into the technical side to show me actually how it works and how we get the technology up and running. And then that's kind of where we took off from there. So it was a combined effort of my real estate capital markets experience and their experience in terms of technology, blockchain, to set it up. So I had to pay them to set up the first application for converting real estate into digital shares.
You're talking about by chance connecting with someone. That's kind of like something you see in a movie, you were in real estate. Yeah, let's talk about it and let me see how we can help each other. That's awesome.
That's business.
What's that?
That's how business goes. I mean, you sometimes you meet the right people at the right time and just in the right place at the right time, and you know how to take advantage of that.
Yeah. So I want to go back for a minute because I was intrigued by, when 23 years old and starting your first venture and, coming out of college right around that time, it was job, 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 as opposed to entrepreneur, which probably wasn't a word that even was being talked about back during that era. How did that come about to start that at 23?
Well, I come from my Nigerian father, so he's very conservative about what your career is going to be. If you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or engineer, or you're a bum. That's one of the 5 categories, right? And so
right?
That's it. Anything else, you're a bum. Forget about it. So I figured the easiest route was going to be a CPA because that was the least amount of education I had to go through, and so I decided to be a CPA. And that was a good track, but I was just kind of challenged with the amount of time ticking and tying, spending time on a computer or an adding machine, not even a computer, trying to talk to the papers, right? That was not very exciting for me. And I looked and saw all the people who were the leaders of this industry. They were all gray, big, thick glasses, and they had a color that didn't look like mine. So I figured this is probably not for me, right?
Yeah.
And right away, I decided to just quit. And that was a big, big moment. Calling my mother first. I didn't call my father and tell her, I can't do this job. I'm going to quit. And she was so disappointed because they worked so hard to get that position, right? But I had knowledge that I'll be okay. I can get out there and find something else to do. Didn't know what it was going to be, but I quit. Moved from Detroit, Michigan to California, San Francisco. Lived in the hotel in the YMCA for a few weeks or a few months until I found a job at the stock exchange as a runner, and then elevated from that job, which was a fascinating job, to work for GE Credit, doing financial analysis work, doing asset-based lending. And at that point, working with GE, our company, our division was like maybe 80 people in 2 different offices. And I remember that we netted $110 million for GE at that time, at the end of the year. And we had this big party, 80 people netted $110 million. And I went to my boss's office and said, hey, is there any way that we can maybe take 10% of that profit we made and give it to the 80 people? And then we'll probably be equity. That's kind of like equity sharing. And we'd all be making over, call it $400K a year. And he told me that's never going to happen. That there's too many, people that GE is tied to in terms of organizations, and that will never happen. So I decided I want to quit that job. That was my last week. And I figured if they can make 110 with 80 people, I can just make a fraction of that.
And I'll be cool.
And I'll be good. I'll be really good. So I figured I'm going to go into the same business. And I did. I did. And that was really the way that set everything off, because I was able to make enough money in one summer to buy my first business.
I laughed when I read that, and as you're talking through that, because I remember calling my mom and dad and telling them that I was going to quit IBM because I was going to buy a convenience store. And they said, "Are you nuts?" My father said, "I spent all that money for you to go to school. I could have just saved that. You could go out and follow all these things you want to on your own."
Yeah. Well, you got to bless them. They're just looking out for the best of us, and based on what they've seen in their past, and that's what they want their kids to go to and not have any mistakes. But I think you just have to have confidence in yourself.
Yeah, you do. And I think the thing is, with my parents, my father never finished school, but my father was successful, had his own business. And I thought he would understand that. But his goal was to make sure all his kids had college degrees. So he figured from that, like the same way you said, that you do certain things, otherwise you're a bum. So it was no middle ground.
Right.
Right.
But he was very proud after he saw the business was successful. He said, "Oh, see, you're taking after your 4 founders and your family. They're all businessmen in Nigeria, so it's natural. It's a natural fit, right?" So he's all of a sudden in love with his son again, right?
Now you're saying that, but we didn't hear this about 2 years ago or whatever it was to start that out. So it's when we go to college, and our kids, and you go to college, you want them to get educated. My father's thing was that every generation should do better than the next generation, which I understood that from his vantage point. And we say certain careers, I knew certain things I would never do. And I know so many people that have gone to school. So you're in accounting, so you're still kind of related to that. But I know lawyers that are doing something totally different. I know people that went to school for medical, that are doctors, that are doing something totally different. So when you think of careers for younger people, And because you have done some amazing things, you quit jobs on a vision. How would you advise a young person, first job out, and they realize that accounting is not for me? Like the young lady that worked for me, her degree was in accounting, but she went into consulting because she said the first year, I knew I could not do that for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give them?
I think that, first of all, do what you love, do what you're good at, right? And sometimes you don't know what that is until later on, what your natural talent is. And everybody has a natural talent. But once you identify what that natural talent is, I think that's where you put your time and grow it, because the money will follow, right? So I think that, just have to have confidence. And even though people chase after big dollars, and sometimes that can put you in trap you, because you can go after a high salary initially for some company, and you're making more than the average person, so you're really comfortable, but you're really tying yourself up, because now your bills are so high, your lifestyle is adapted to that level of income. You can't make a pivot. You can't. You're locked up. You got the golden handcuffs, as they say. And I think that's a big problem for many people. They wake up, 20 years later, and they're unhappy with themselves because they didn't go with their passion. They went with the money. They went for the money.
They bought into that, and I know so many people. You use that scenario. I know so many people that from the outside they look successful, but from the inside they're miserable.
True.
And probably at a stage of the game, they're afraid to step out and try and do something. And this is when it comes back to, maybe I should have made this decision earlier. And you got to live with that the rest of your life. But I always say that, you're never too late.
That's very true. Unless you over leverage yourself, right? And you are now leveraged to the hilt because you use this job as leverage, and now you have the big house, the big cars, all the nice pets and everything in your house. But you get to a point where you're trapped. You can't do anything else. If you leave this income source, your liabilities are too high, so you're locked in. I always say live underneath your means, right? So that you always have the ability to turn and do something else if you live below your means. Yeah.
So that's the opposite of the so-called golden handcuffs that we talk about. It's like, private equity or mergers and acquisitions, you get locked in. That's kind of the opposite of that, because you're connected to that, and you've got to stay there, and you're just living a miserable life. So when you look back on your life, because I was really intrigued by the 23-year-old of making that hard level decision that you decided to do what you did, but in the end it worked out. So what is probably one of the best decisions when you look back on your career and say, that was probably one of the most pivotal decisions I made, and it worked?
Yeah, that pretty much was the most pivotal, because if I buckled down to the pressure of my parents of saying accounting, I'd probably be a partner right now for EY, or maybe a different accounting firm. But to say, look, I'm 23, this is not for me. I only did it for a year, but I'm not happy. It's not about the money. I'm just not happy. I'm leaving. And I left town. I just didn't leave the job. I left the whole town because I wanted to start totally new, a new fresh face in a new marketplace. People didn't know my name. I was just able to just take off and do what I wanted to do. And that was my mission. So I was very motivated to be successful in California.
So how did you stay focused when you made that move? You decided this is not for me. I'm going to move to another region. I'm going to start over again. And I'm sure they were nice when you looked at the ceiling and said, did I do the right thing? Or walk us through that.
Yeah, that was a tough part. That was a tough time in my life. I was excited as I don't know what. So, but if you look at me, that was a tough scenario. I left Detroit to go and left a very nice job to go to California and have no idea what I was going to be doing. I thought I was going to be living with my mother's friend, who was the Thorntons, who ran a big church in San Francisco. When I got there, they told me they didn't have any room in their house, so I had to go stay at the YMCA. So that was an experience, living in the Tenderloin of San Francisco, in the YMCA, with derelicts all around me, and I was nervous, but I was excited. I just knew that something else was going to happen. And when I got that first job at the stock exchange, that was a whole new experience to kind of involve myself in. I was a runner, running between the floor and the order desk, right? Watching people,
old school,
old school, but watching them, people make millions and watch people lose millions in a day, right? It was exciting for me to be a part of that process. And then, journey on to GE, and then the journey on to the first business was just sheer being in the right place, but also being motivated to, for example, the capitalization for the business that I bought. I didn't have all the money, right?
Yeah.
I made some good money over the summer where I had a very large down payment, but I went to my parents. They didn't want to. They were a little still upset, so they didn't want to give me any money for this car. You want to be in a car business, like you said? I spent all this money on your Michigan education. You want to go and be a car business? Are you kidding me? I'm not paying for that, right? So I had to, actually talk the broker into putting his commission into my deal as equity. And that was, and I also talked the seller into carrying back a note for the real estate and the business, and to stay there with me for a period of 8 months to hold the transition, but to show him that I can actually do this business and pay him off. So those are all the challenges in order to buy that first business. And it really wasn't about that business. It was about me being an entrepreneur for the very first time, or the second time. I was a paper boy for the first time, but the very first time having a business with employees, I was totally on fire and excited about turning that business around.
So do you take any of those learnings when you're hiring a, say, senior executive to work in your organization? Do you take any of the learnings from all of the transitions you've gone through to get to this point, from a more traditional to a more innovative kind of background? Or
yeah, I do. I look at, I think it's all about culture. When you look at hiring new people, especially senior people, you really can't take a lot of chances for failure, because if they don't work out, that's a big setback. When you're talking about a senior official, it's a setback financially, is also a setback in terms of meeting your objectives. So yeah, I think I look at people very carefully. I go through a long kind of evaluation process, but it's about cultural fit to the company. And what I'm looking for is that entrepreneurial spirit, no matter what the job is, that they're going to take ownership of taking the job, but also growing the job and excelling in the job. So if they're that motivated like I am, that'll be a better fit, because they see the future. They see it bigger, brighter for themselves, which is exactly what I'm looking for in an executive.
Yeah, more of a growth mindset, as opposed to the fixed kind of thought process. I've mentioned that because, you've been reading a lot of articles on leadership, and I do a lot of leadership development. Matter of fact, I leave here tonight to go to Kuala Lumpur to do a leadership offsite for an organization. Competencies have changed from leaders, looking for leaders. Empathy is cool. Entrepreneurship is kind of, but I think sometimes it's kind of become a buzzword. That's once one but entrepreneurial mindset. How do you gauge that if you've been in corporate all your life? I mean, I can talk to you, and you talk about entrepreneurship because you've tried it. You've gone from the comfort zone to say, I'm going to try something. How do you decipher?
Well, when you start talking to candidates, especially in leadership roles, I ask them what their vision is for the business, where they see themselves in 5 years. Why are they coming to this business, right? Why couldn't they go someplace else? And if I hear them talk about the future, they're painting the picture of their future, and I see the same picture of where we're going, I can see that they put themselves in that space. That's number one. Number two, when I hear the motivation is less about the current compensation and more about the future opportunity of income and shares in the company, that makes me feel like, okay, these guys are not motivated by just a check I'm going to give them, because some people can sit on that forever. I'll give you an example. I was trying to hire somebody who's a salesperson, but is licensed by the SEC. We need licensed personnel to move our product. And this person, sounded good, looked good, had good vision. But when I said, okay, send me your tax returns over the past 6 years, I want to see how much you've made in sales, right? I was disappointed to find out that the person only made the basic salary at a place, that's known for high level commissions. So basically that told me that if you can't make it, right, then how are you going to make it with me? I'm not a teacher. I'm not here to teach. I can't pull you up. I don't have time for that right now. I need somebody who can take off. So that was a deciding factor not to hire that person, because they've never been where they want to be. And so they can't show me they can get there.
No track record. Wow. I've never heard of that being used as kind of a fact finding when you're trying to figure out whether this person is a good fit, looking at the tax returns. But I'm sure in what you're doing this is what you're looking for, because you need someone to drive revenue, which in turn will drizzle down to whatever their compensation level is. Wow.
Very true. A lot of people can describe their job. They can describe the success of their job. But at the end of the day, that's just a conversation. You don't know how true it is or not. You can call and get a reference, and they'll say, oh, that's a good guy or a good person. But when you look at the tax return, it shows that they were successful, which is in sales, which is why you're bringing them on board.
Okay, cool. So let's take a break now, and we're going to, for the audience, we're going to kind of watch a video which shows, what Edward is talking about and how they came up with this idea of tokenization.
Investing.
Wow. You know what I thought about in watching that? I thought about you going to that blockchain conference and then putting the foundation, albeit with other people, the technical people, in putting all this together. That is mind-boggling.
Thank you. And it's still continuing. I mean, this is still an ongoing journey to not only just provide the service of creating tokenization, but also the service of issuing the shares to qualified investors, raising capital for customers, and now creating the technology so we have our own NASDAQ exchange. This focused on real estate assets, right? So that's the other of us. We want to have a full solution for creating, issuing, managing, and also liquidating digital shares of real estate. And so that meant continuing to develop technology, continuing to build a platform of properties as well as a platform of investors. And so it's never ending. But it's very exciting business to be in. And I'm really happy that we've come this far.
Wow. I did some work for the Federal Reserve Bank in U.S. as well as the Federal Reserve Bank in Singapore region. And I understood the challenge they were going through from a strategic workforce planning perspective, is trying to find people who understood not only to design these initiatives that you're talking about, but it was a younger workforce. and bringing those people in to build out all of the things you're talking about here. So regulations was a part of that. So it wasn't like just starting a business and we just go do that, because over that you had the governance.
Correct. So it took us 2 years. 2020 is when we actually started to sell the securities, because it took 2 years to get the license to be a registered investment advisor from the SEC. And then you have to hire people who have the license as well, that actually are the ones who are selling on your behalf. So it took a while, but we were happy to wait for that moment. Just look at it now. Look at the world today. Had we tried to bypass the SEC and tried selling without the license, we'd be shut down, or we'd have collected money and non-transparent. And so it's better to do things the right way, I think, to make sure that there's no chance you're not looking over your shoulder for somebody's going to shut you down because you're not acting appropriately.
I just find that amazing, because to start a business, car station, I can start a business without it. I get the license and I do what I got to do, but not to start a business. And then I got to go to 2 layers above me and try and understand what they need. And then I need,
Then you had to have $150 million worth of assets under management in order to get your license. Right? So it wasn't like you just apply and you get a license. So you have to show them that you're going to be doing business throughout the country. You have to have a minimum of $150 million worth of assets that are under management. So luckily for us, that the assets we tokenize are now assets under management. So when we got to the 2.2 billion, we were well over the requirement. But many people have a hard time getting that minimum requirement satisfied.
Yeah, I can only imagine that. That's just at such a higher level in being an entrepreneur and going into that kind of business. So how does it work because the last part of that video talked about the global approach. The global approach, kind of the same weaving, going through the regulations for you to sell, say, in France or Europe or whatever it would be.
Yeah, you have to go to the governments of those countries, because you have to understand what their requirements are on the regulatory level to comply with. And you might have to even license yourself within that governmental construct to operate in that government, in that country. And so we have been slow to expand internationally because we think that it's distracting right now. We have a big focus on the United States. That's our core market. We did open up in Africa because we think that's a surging country. The whole continent is surging with youth and technology, and we wanted to have a seed planted in that marketplace because we think it's going to be very dynamic in the next 10 years. And also, we found that the technology level of understanding for coding is very high in West Africa. So we're employing them because it's much cost effective to employ them to do technical work as opposed to United States or Central Europe. So, if you have the advantage to use those resources, take advantage of them because it can save you money. And that's what we've done.
Wow. So my other question to you, disrupted is coming along. Do you see an expansion beyond what you're doing now? Tokenization, maybe you can move it into a different, if you could share that,
Well, like I said, creating the full ecosystem is the priority, which we think we're there now. I'm here in Dallas. We're still a deal with acquiring a major stake in a technology company that has tech that we're using. So rather than license that tech like we were doing before, we just bought into a big chunk of that company. So we own the technology, right? And we now have that base of talent that can be used to expand our business. So planting these normal seeds is very important. But when you say expanding to other markets or doing something different, we want to continue adding more value to the existing platform. For example, now that we have put, $5 billion worth of real estate on the market, we understand that real estate. We know the value of it. If any of the shareholders who buy shares in their real estate now want to loan out on the shares, we can provide the banking lending services against the real estate that we've already taken about. Like I said, we understand that real estate, so they can come to us directly and take a loan for 50% of their shares value, because that's a good loan to make, right? And only us our team can make that loan because we understand those assets.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but you got a $25 trillion upside, for the market. So you've got a long way to a long reach,
Correct.
as you proceed on that journey. Wow, that's amazing. So the question I wanted to ask you is that what would you say was the most important lesson you've learned? Because you've gone through so much. I mean, you've gone to the career piece, and you had the gumption to say, nope, not for me. I'm going to try something, and I'm going to start at the bottom and learn all of this to move into a different part of your career. What would you say was the most important leadership lesson you've learned, over your journey?
That's a tough one. I think patience is a big lesson that I've learned. To be more patient, because as I started this in 2018, it was a race to see how can we get to the leadership position. We want to be a thought leader in this space. We want to be, have more than everybody else. We want to be in the front line position. But then after a while, you realize that you're chasing after yourself. There's nobody else. The next person is far distance behind you, but you're still running to get further ahead as fast as possible. And I realized that was not the smartest thing to do. Sometimes you should just take your time, do planning, be patient, and work your magic one day at a time, as opposed to lose all the sleep, try to beat all the records, try to get there, kind of make sure you're everywhere all the time. Even though it seems like where I am now, I'm everywhere at the same time, but learn to be more patient about the success, and take your time, and that somebody's not gonna come and eclipse you overnight and become number one, and you're now number two, which is a fear for us. I think that you just have to be steadfast on what you're doing, and everything else take care of itself.
Yeah. Climbing to the top of the pyramid. I got to get there as fast as I can. Slow down.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll slow down and breathe.
Yeah, calm down. Just get some rest. But my mother used to tell me all the time, "Hey, tomorrow there's always tomorrow. You can always finish up tomorrow. You can do more tomorrow. Don't try to cram everything in today," which is what I always try to do. Right? I want to make sure I got everything plus more done in a day, because I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. But she always said, if you can live to tomorrow as another day, you can do more tomorrow. So don't kill yourself trying to get to tomorrow.
I remember a quote that Tiger Woods said about his father. He said, the older he gets, the smarter his father appears to be. You're right, because when you sit around, father and I would sit around and he'd talk about these things. Sometimes you go, yeah. But the older you get and the more you think back, he was on point and had no education. I mean, it was just kind of an inbred kind of they used to call it in the South mother wit. That was kind of the euphemism for, just common sense you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your parents today, are they are witnessing what you're going through now?
My mother is. I lost my father in 1999, and I've been kind of the head of the family since then. But my mother has been witnessing it, and she's so, she just wants me to be happy and be healthy. She keeps saying, slow down and make sure you get your rest, eat well. Everything else is not important. She says, no matter how much success you have, if you can't enjoy it because you're not healthy, then it was all for nothing. So she says, just focus on your health and your happiness. And she's, like you said, at the end of the day, they're the smartest people in the room.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The small things. Yeah, she's sending them small things. But I think sometimes generationally, we figure we got to get all these things. I had a coaching session with an executive today, and he was just grasping at everything. This business was he's in the 4 or 5 different business units that he's grasping. And I said, is there a rush? I said, because I don't understand. Every time we talk, it's a new thing. And this one is doing this. And at the end of the session, he said, you're right. He said, because I don't know why I'm rushing. What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, as an African American, we have to do more, and we have to do a lot more, make a lot more noise to get attention, right? I mean, I've been doing this since almost 5 years now, and there's still not a lot of it. Where people know who we are, know our brand, They still are very negative about, okay, you just getting started. I'm sure they're waiting for the big person to come in and do what we're doing and eclipse us. And then, okay, now that makes sense, right? So I think you just always have to do more. And I think that's one of the reasons it motivates, because you want to show that, people of color can actually be this successful. And that's an eye-opening experience for many people.
Yeah, I applaud you for going there, because I'm thinking about what you're doing, and I've seen you on stage and talking through what you're doing. And the audience sometimes, and exactly what you were talking about, it's a different filter, I say. That's probably a good way to say it. It's a different filter when you see someone that looks like us leading a conversation or being a disruptor or innovator than someone else. That a different lens.
You just don't expect it. You don't expect to hear, African-American male talking about tokenization of assets. I mean, that's something that's you expect some professor from Harvard or from or Stanford to be talking about and making it plain. And you say, oh yeah, that's perfect. They're perfect for that, right? But just an average businessman who happens to be of color talking about it, it's like, oh, well, how is that even possible, right? Mm-hmm. How is it possible you have a platform? How is it possible you're operating right now? And how is it possible you're operating without that much capital? I mean, there are people who come before us with a lot of capital who fail. They're out of business right now. So that's because, maybe they didn't understand the real business. They might have understood the technology, didn't understand the business use case. So they were moving in the wrong direction and didn't get enough traction. Whereas we started off with bootstraps, very little capital, but we knew who to talk to and what kind of solution we're providing and build on that. And, it's just one thing leads to another.
Wow. Ed, thank you so much for being with us today. We will rebroadcast this midweek sometimes to get more traction. But it was an honor for me to have you here. And I remember we met in Dubai at that crazy conference that we had here. But it was so good to reconnect and have you here. And I wish you all the best. And I'm going to be back in the States right after Thanksgiving. So let's connect and see what we can do or whatever.
No,
awesome.
I appreciate Ron. I appreciate you having me on your CEO series. I think this is a good message to put out there. You're inspiring a lot of people, young people trying to figure out what to do in terms of business. I think a lot of people are second guessing jobs right now. People are leaving these jobs right now, right? Because they think they can do more. This whole equation with the pandemic is let people realize the genie's out of the bottle. They can do more with their time than the 8 hours in the office, right? So a lot of opportunity.
Well, let me say this, because I thought of something as you were talking through that. I think you talked about COVID impact, and then when you think of talking about the tech impact, when the earnings were revealed a few weeks ago, and all the repercussions and the Twitter debacle, I think every worker today is reevaluating the relationship.
Correct. Right.
Because they see what could happen just like that.
Yeah. I mean, a job is not necessarily a lifetime commitment. A job is about learning something, understand who you are, what you do better, and then figure out how to elevate yourself once you understand that skill set. And it may not be staying in the job for the next 15 years doing the same thing. It may be jumping into a better opportunity where you can actually use your entrepreneurial skills to make more doing what you know how to do best. Yeah.
I told a CEO the other week, I said, the days of getting to watch for 15, 20 years of service, that business is over.
Yeah, exactly.
The watch business for retirement, 20 years of service, it's over with. And the quicker that you all realize that, the better off the entire world is going to be as a result of it.
Absolutely, Ron. I mean, have a day job if you need it to survive, but plant the seeds on your own business, whether it be a hobby, whether it be photographs, whatever it is. Plant those seeds, because that's going to be your future, not the day job.
That's it. My man, thank you.
All right. Likewise, bro. Take care.
All right, man. Be cool.
I'll see you later. You too.
All righty.
Take care.
Okay. Hang on for a minute. Just